Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to my podcast where you can gain some insight on my perspective. My name's Hayden, and this is episode 4 of a series called 24 Lessons I've Learned in My 24 Years of Life. Before we get into this episode, I really want to just take a moment to acknowledge and appreciate every single one of you who have listened to my podcast, especially my grandma and her friends. I have received the utmost respect and feedback from you guys that actually made me quite emotional reading your responses. No matter what the age or the demographic, I am happy to be able to speak to all of you. So thank you for that. I also wanted to say, if you're watching this on YouTube, there are other avenues you can listen to this on. I now have this uploaded on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Let's get into this. Disclaimer, what I say might not ring true to you, and that is okay. If this isn't for you, you can go watch something else. You're not obligated to stay here, even if you are a friend or a family member supporting me. However, if you do choose to stay, I do believe that you will gain something from this. And if you don't feel that you're gaining anything from watching me or interacting with me, that is totally okay. So, episode 4, setting and reinforcing boundaries. One of my biggest realizations and lessons. This is always a tough topic as it's a work in progress. I am grateful to not be where I used to be because now I feel I have more control over my emotions and myself. I'm a lot happier and it's been really great. But I'm gonna start talking about the not so great stuff. So, I want to say that at this point in time in my life, literally within the past year, I've learned to fully take responsibility and accountability for my words and my actions. But that has not always been true. I used to put a lot of blame on other people. I used to say that that's not my fault, that is your fault. Especially when it came to a friendship or a relationship. I would put the blame on the other person because I was a people pleaser and I was like, well, I just keep the peace to keep the situation from blowing up, so I did nothing wrong. That too was the problem, was trying to keep the peace. I stayed quiet. I did not express my wants or needs or boundaries or expectations, so the other person didn't know, and they slowly built resentment, or quickly, depending on how long the relationship lasted. I will say the longest relationship I've ever had is 2 months, because things came to an end. They needed to end, or else I would continue contributing to making this person miserable, and they would contribute to making me miserable. Just about every relationship I've been in has become toxic because of the both of us. I used to say, yeah, the friendships and relationships were toxic because of them. If I meet somebody out and about now and we're talking and they're like, yeah, all my exes are crazy, all my friends are crazy, I'm staying far away from them because I already know they are part of that problem and they have so much to work through and unpack. They are not even aware of it yet. Becoming aware is step 1. Step 2 is acknowledging and taking accountability. So for me, I have a lot of failed relationships, ranging from 2 weeks to 2 months. Sure, it's exciting that very first week until you realize, oh, I don't like this person. I don't like the way they talk to me. I don't like this. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna see how it goes. That was that was mistake number 1. That should have been addressed week 1 of, hey, I'm feeling this way. Can I talk to you about this? I had maybe 2 relationships who were very open to communicating and talking about everything going on. And I do want to say, as I'm talking about this, by no means do I want these people back in my life. They served a purpose then, I learned a lesson from them, and we have not been in contact since. And that is how I like to keep things because I personally don't feel in my life right now that I need to reconnect with those people. However, I do understand that I was at fault in these situations, whereas when things ended, all the blame was put on them. And whether that person took accountability or not is their own thing. But I came to realize it wasn't just them, it was me too. It was probably an equal amount of, we both despise each other at this point. So yeah, it's coming to terms with you are the problem, which is a hard thing to accept for some people. I know it was very hard for me to accept because I was like, I'm holding the peace. I'm holding the peace down. Everything's harmonious on my end. On your end, I cannot speak for you. That is your choice to yell at me or not. I'm not gonna get into that. I'm gonna ignore you. I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z, right? Except for communicate with them. I built this fear around people getting explosive and yelling when they were just very passionate because something I was doing was bothering them. However, there had been times where they did not express to me what was upsetting them. Other times I had a friend that would tell me straight up, which I'm grateful for her for telling me straight up, I don't like when you do that. But since I wasn't ready to hear it and I didn't believe that to be true, I took that as a personal attack. I was like, you're attacking me, you're being mean to me, I hate that you're being mean to me, oh my god, this friendship just sucks. When I look back at memories or photos and shit, and I'm like, it was not the worst. What was the worst was me unable to express, hey, I don't like the way you're talking to me. Can we maybe address this? Or is there a reason you're speaking to me like this? Is there something that I need to look at that I'm not seeing? I want to be sure that we are on the same page and vibrating at the same level. Or am I supporting endeavors that I don't believe are beneficial to you, and I want to express that to you? A lot of the times in relationships or friendships, we project. And we're like, oh, they're probably thinking this, so I'm not going to talk about this. Or they're probably thinking this, I'm going to bring this up. We don't know what's going on in each other's heads. And a lot of times we say we do because we end up projecting that. And if our projections come true, then we believe that we know what that other person is talking about. But if you are saying, that person does not like me, and they say, of course I like you, why would you say that? Well, because you don't like me. You know, if you say it enough, they're going to end up not liking you because you're not telling them why. It's making them upset. And then it's making them build resentment towards you. So by the time you say it maybe a sixth time, and they're like, yeah, I don't like you. And you're like, see, that's what I've been trying to tell you. You don't like me. You manifested that. Your projection came true because there is power behind the words you are saying. There is energy behind the words you are saying. Some of this might not ring true to people. That's okay. It took me a long time to realize. I'm not saying you will realize it. Or maybe you will, and it's a hard thing to accept because gaining a new perspective is daunting because it's not within your comfort zone. Once you exit your comfort zone, that's where growth comes from. I'm speaking too much about too many different things. So yeah, you contributed to that person not liking you. You were part of the problem. However, it's up to you to learn whether or not that's something you're going to accept. If you don't accept it, that lesson might hit you again and again, and it might hit you tenfold. That happened to me so many times. I kept ignoring red flags and lessons. The universe was begging for my attention to be like, pay attention to this or else it's gonna get worse. And I'm like, nah. And then the lesson hits me like a freight train. And I am at my worst. And I'm like, what just happened? I am entirely shaken up about this. I need to realize something here because if this gets worse than this, I don't think I can go through this again. And my grandma Sherry has been with me through a lot of these really difficult lessons and has gotten secondhand energy from my situations, which I'm so sorry for, but we are in alignment. We are in a parallel of somehow my grandma and I are connected like this so she can feel what I feel. If you believe that to be true, cool. If you don't, ignore what I just said. But her and I believe that to be true because we have so many alignments and parallels. And yeah, maybe I'll talk about that in another video. It's not relevant in this video. So back on topic, I waited for lessons to hit me like a truck before I acknowledged them, before I acknowledged that I needed to reflect and work through things that I had been ignoring because the silence grows loud. As you're watching this, you might be thinking about situations and experiences that are similar to mine, and you're like, oh, do I need to reflect on that? Perhaps. Maybe I could improve this aspect of my relationship if I acknowledge this. Maybe there's something you haven't been wanting to acknowledge for a while. The other person is like, okay, this person doesn't talk about this, maybe they don't like this, maybe they're going nuts. Say the damn thing. Say what you want to say and mean what you say. If you want to, you will. A lesson from my previous video, if you want to, you will. If you don't want to, you won't. Simple. Moving forward. I was the type of person to say all my exes are crazy. That was a mistake. And I'm sorry for saying that. I am not afraid to admit my faults, like I said, or take responsibility for my actions. I too was the problem. I had a friend that would communicate so clearly with me that she didn't like certain things that I was doing, or she didn't like the way I talked to her. And sometimes I would realize it, and I'm like, maybe you're right. But before I got to that realization, sometimes it was too late because I would take it as a personal attack at first. And it was so daunting to me to even speak up, because I thought speaking up was being disrespectful, or I thought that I was not worthy enough to speak up and express my needs and wants, and that I should continue putting this person on a pedestal, when in reality, we're on the same plane. There was no hierarchy. There was no need to make this person superior and make myself inferior, or other way around, vice versa, whatever. We were on the same plane. That's why we were friends. I could clearly communicate just as this person was, but I chose to keep vibrating down here and be like, woe is me, they're being mean to me, I'm getting anxious around them. And because I'm feeding my mind all these things, my projections came true. And sure enough, this person is like, why are you acting like this? You're a little bitch. You're like grow up, gain some confidence. Like all these things, yes, what this person was saying was true. I just did not appreciate the delivery in which they were coming to me. However, I had no control over that at that point because this person has built up so much resentment at this point. It all was coming out because the little ways of them trying to tell me these things was going right over my head, and I kept taking it as a personal attack. So in the meantime, we're both building resentment towards each other, and I'm like, the cap is gonna blow off this soon. And one day it did. It did. And what did I do? Put all the blame on them because I could do no wrong. That was probably my most toxic trait, is thinking I could do no wrong, or thinking this is all their fault. And you know, when I'm describing situations to other people, since they love and support me, they're taking my side automatically. Now, if people are going to love and support me, I'm like, do not take sides. If I'm telling you something, it's subjective. Please do not give your input unless I ask for it. And that's an expectation that I am communicating with people. Like, I do not want feedback from certain things. I'm simply telling you something. I just want to tell you something. I may not want advice. If I want your advice, I will ask for it, and I'm very clear about that. I do not want people supporting my delusions, which everybody around me supported my delusion of that person was a bad person, a toxic person. They do not deserve to be in my life, which sure, the not deserving to be in my life part. Break that apart. I by no means want these people back in my life because I've lived so many years without these people in my life and I'm still a happy person. I do not need to go back and bring them into this because the version that I was friends with at that time no longer exists. They're a completely different person at this point. And then it would take getting to know this new version of them, and do we want to rehash stuff? And that's entirely a decision that is up to you. If you're in a similar situation, that is totally up to you. If you feel it is worth bringing this person back into your life, seeing as though they have changed, whether that was for the better or the worse, that's something you're getting yourself into. I have tried to rehash relationships and friendships that ended up turning around and going down the same exact way. And some of these, I have never been more clear with my boundaries and expectations, and the other person was in the mindset of, oh, I know you to be this way from the last time we talked, so I'm projecting. And when you don't act in accordance of my projections, it's making me build resentment towards you. This is overall a very difficult lesson to learn, and something, like I said, it's a work in progress. So I'm giving you guys a lot of stuff to think about because it was a lot for me to think about and come to realize. It's simple. Set and reinforce boundaries. I'm gonna give you another example. Say you're having a conversation with somebody and it gets heated and you're the person that does not have conversations when you're in a charged mindset like that. This person's yelling at you, and say this is you setting a boundary. Hey, I would love to talk about this with you, but can we please talk about it when we're both not expressing our emotions outwardly? Sometimes when I say this to people, it charges them even more because they're like, no, I'm expressing myself. I'm telling you I am upset about this. I'm equally as upset about it, but I don't like to speak when we are this elevated. Everything gets too emotionally charged, and I like to be calm and be able to hear myself think versus when you're in a heightened state of mind. You might say things you don't actually mean. You're also not being mindful of the person you're speaking to, or yourself. The way you treat others is a reflection of how you treat yourself. Remember that. So if you're yelling at somebody, something inside of you is yelling at you. If you are nitpicking somebody else, you are nitpicking yourself on the inside. What you don't like in others is what you do not like in yourself. You don't know what you don't know. That's something to think about. That might not hit you yet. That's okay. Come back to this podcast when you think maybe it has hit you. I've had to go back to many podcasts because I'm like, oh, I remember something from that. It didn't make sense to me then, but it makes sense to me now, and it's applicable to my life. So yeah. So you set that boundary with that person, like, hey, I would love to have this conversation with you. I want to know what I'm doing wrong, and if I could let you know if there's something I don't like, we can communicate through this, we can work it out, whatever. If they say, okay, yes, I agree, great. You've set a boundary. The next time it comes up and they're good, you've reinforced it. Let's calmly talk about this. Oh, you're right, sorry. Or option B comes around. This person's charged up about something. You're like, hey, remember I said I only want to communicate this topic with you if we are not in a charged state of mind. They're like, I don't care what you said. I don't care. This is how I feel. That person is not being mindful once again. Now we've entered a level of I'm angry, but I'm still going to hold true to what I believe is that I believe I want to have this conversation when we are not in a heightened state of mind. So I'm going to reinforce the boundary I set previously. So remember what I said last time, I would really like to have this conversation if we are not in a heightened state of mind. I understand that you are angry. I feel strongly about the topic we're talking about as well, and I would like to learn more about it. You don't have to say all of that, but something along the lines of acknowledging the other person's feelings while acknowledging yours and understanding that you both can communicate about this. And in that moment, if they cross that, you're like, you say it again. But if they continue to disrespect you, walk away. Walk away. Still hold true to your belief that you will not have that conversation unless you are both speaking calmly. Do not stoop down to their level only for them to bring you down and lower your vibration. Keep your vibration high. They're gonna have to work through their emotions, and if you choose not to talk to them, you have set and reinforced those boundaries and you are locked in. And they're gonna start taking you seriously once they realize it. Oh, they were serious about that. People will stay until it hurts bad enough, but when is enough, you know? This person's gonna go their own way, not talk to this person. Say there's an option 3, right? You're having that conversation. They have once again elevated their anger and are expressing it outwardly to you. And you're like, hey, remember last time I said we should talk about this calmly, or that's the only way I'm gonna talk about this is if we both speak calmly to one another. And they're like, no. And you're like, okay, you know what? And you fight back. You broke your boundary. You did not reinforce it. Therefore, it's lost. So you cannot get mad at them. You need to acknowledge yourself that you did not take responsibility for sticking to the boundary you had set. You crossed your own boundary, which then leads them to believe, oh, they do want to match my energy. That person's not going to take you seriously with that boundary and expectation until you consistently reinforce it. The setting and reinforcing boundaries is super applicable to a lot of different areas in your life, and you'll see it come up a lot more. Those are some examples of setting and reinforcing boundaries. I could talk about this all day long. I have a multitude of examples of me not taking accountability for my own actions and understanding that yes, I too was the problem, and that's probably one of the hardest things to admit for a lot of people is I too was the problem. I acknowledge that. I accept that. And once you do accept that, your relationships are going to change. You're going to become more aware of what is going on, and you're going to have more control over your emotions when you are talking to other people, and you're finally going to be able to see maybe what that other person had been trying to tell you the entire time. Even though I was upset and mad in the moment when my friend is telling me, you need to step up, you need to gain more confidence, you need to speak your mind, you need to set and reinforce your own boundaries, had I just been like, you're right, I do need to do that, I'm going to work on that to better our friendship or relationship, whatever it is, things could have been way different. But I don't think about how things could have been different because I feel that that happened for a reason, and now we are different versions of ourselves. And there's a reason we are not back into one another's lives. So I take that as a sign. That's probably my favorite thing about this lesson is being able to look back, almost like a movie reel. I'm seeing all the scenes come back of these super heightened, crazy situations that I thought I would never recover from, and clearly I have. I still think about them sometimes because I come across situations where I'm like, this is a situation where I need to set and reinforce a boundary. This is what happened previously. Do you want it to get to that point? No, then speak up, because speaking up can be scary. You're trying to think about how this person might react. In the moment, just understand you are not in control of how the other person reacts. If they're a person that is willing to say that, yes, I am in control of my emotions and how I react to external stimuli, cool, you're gonna have a good conversation. If not, and it's charged, maybe take my advice that I recommended in the examples of, like, you're having that argument. The setting and reinforcing boundaries episode could go on for an eternity. So in wrapping all of this up, I wanted to say that mutual respect is something I value. If I am being disrespected, I'm simply going to walk away from a situation or remain quiet or go and work through any anger that may have been lingering from a conversation I've had. I've learned, especially with family, if there's an argument, that I will stay silent because my 2 cents don't need to be added to it, and I don't see the value of my words being added to a situation. I'll walk away. If I'm not spending time around certain people, it is intentional. Know your value to others and others' value to you. and understand when it's appropriate for you to speak up or sit this one out and communicate with people. Don't be afraid to set and reinforce your boundaries, because if the other person is not going to respect them, you're not meant to be in that situation. Take that as a sign to take a step back and reflect. Not necessarily leave, because a lot of us do leave when things get hard. The ones who have strength are the ones that stay and work through it. I'm not afraid to admit I was very weak-minded in my relationships because I had already dug myself the deepest hole ever, and I realized I'm not ready for a relationship at that time. I need to take a step back, reflect, and work on myself. I'm very grateful to say that I'm at a point in my life now where if something does come up in a relationship, if I get into one, I can confidently and clearly communicate any boundaries, expectations, any conversations, anything can be worked through, but I understand if there is resistance along the way, if our beliefs don't align, that's something to talk about and, either end it if it's not working out, or it's something you can work through. I can confidently say that that is something I'm willing to do versus a few years ago, I would not even have considered doing such. So I hope you guys learned something from this episode. I apologize that it was so long, but it's a really big lesson that is endless. I could go on and on and on about examples and personal experiences, but I want you guys to get the most out of these. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys watch this on YouTube, please give a huge thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell to get notified every single time I post. If you guys are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a rating and review. I really appreciate y'all's feedback, and maybe after this series there might be a different type of podcast, who knows? So feel free to ask me questions. I do film these videos in advance, but maybe I can acknowledge any questions in a later video. I did want to let you guys know that you have the opportunity to send me any questions, whether that is via the comments on my YouTube channel, whether that is within the reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or within my Instagram DMs. However you guys want to get a hold of me, I'll be checking them. If you guys have any personal questions that you want to ask towards this series, towards anything, if you guys have any questions in general, I can do a separate Q&A video and include it in this series, and that way I can address things that are specific to you guys. So I want to say I do not have all the knowledge, I do not have all the answers. I'm willing to learn, and if I can give you advice or insight on a situation or experience, let me know. My goal is to reach at least one of you or help at least one of you in some way, shape, or form. So if I could do that through a Q&A video and that is beneficial for you guys, let me know. If not, I'm going to continue doing the series regardless. But I just wanted to throw in an opportunity for more engagement and interaction with you guys. So again, thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this podcast. I will catch you guys in next week's episode where we talk about how rejection is redirection.